All right, good evening, and welcome to another Saturday night conversation here on the Tobago Inspirational Network. Tonight we have a very unique topic, and we have a doctor in the house, and it's been a while since I've been able to chat with her, and probably the first time in this capacity. So let me just welcome Dr. Shireen Kwashi to the program. Good evening, Dr. Kwashi. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me again on this program, Mr. Cornell McLean.
Great. So tonight we're talking about suicide. And we were just talking before the program started, and we were talking about the fact that some countries in the Caribbean are suicide is so prevalent. Um, and one of the things that really amazes me is that I don't know, we probably just took it for granted. But when I was growing up, when you heard about suicide, you just figured it was somebody, an old person who probably had some romantic issues or something like that, or maybe some financial issues. But now you're seeing young children, less than 10, and teenagers and all, any age group, really dealing with struggling with suicidal thoughts. But before we get into that, before we get into what is happening now, let's talk about from a broader perspective. Share with us what is happening in terms of suicide and the prevalence of suicide across the Caribbean, with more specifically with more focus on Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad, and Tobago, and so forth.
So what they have found over the years, um, in terms of suicide, is that is actually the highest in three countries in the Caribbean. So that will be Guyana ranking number one, followed by Suriname, then followed by Trinidad and Tobago. No, that is actually closely linked to the ethnicity of these countries. So, as you will know, Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname also have a high population of Indians, East Indians. And because of that, I'm not being racial in any way, but this has been observed over the years, that contributes to such a high figure of suicide in the Caribbean. And some data coming out of East Asia is that they found that actually India was actually highest for suicide, followed by Sri Lanka, then followed by Thailand. So they were also seeing that somehow the East Indian population contributes is a high risk group basically for suicide. Now, and well, yeah, basically that's it. Now, it's also linked in terms of their methods. So what will happen is that the East Indians will more use the organophosphate. So we know of paraquat, commonly known as gramazone, is what they would usually use, right? But the Afro-Caribbeans will more use analgesics, which we know as painkillers, or they would use benzodiazepines. No, you all will be more familiar. Benzodiazepines will include drugs like Valium, clonazepam, lorazepam. Those are what we would call like sedatives as well, or what they would use to either keep calm, make them sleep, etc. So because that is what the Afro-Caribbeans will more use, while the East Indians will more use paraquat. And as we know, that it's really lethal in terms of even at small doses. So those are the data coming out of what they have seen with regards to Caribbean itself.
But what do you think? Sorry, just muted
Uh,
myself there. Sorry. What do you think drives someone? I understand different situations, finances, relationships, stress, depression, and all of that. No, give us a little bit, take us a little bit more into the mindset of somebody who decides, I'm just going to take my life. As far as I'm concerned, that is not an easy undertaking, but yet, I was reading earlier, it says and one in every 4 days, one person dies by suicide in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, that's a lot of people. What drives somebody to that level to say, I want to take my life?
Well, out of the data coming out of the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago in particular, is that actually 76%, you would think it's due to mental illness in the Caribbean, but what they said it's more due to domestic issues between family, husbands, wives, relationship issues apparently contributes to 76% of the suicide in Trinidad and Tobago. However, data coming out from WHO with regards to the US, America, is that the 90% of it is actually linked to some sort of diagnosable mental illness, right? So some of these persons may have a sort of mental illness, and this is what sometimes will cause them to experience suicidal ideations. Now, one of the most common one, it will be those under what we would class the mood disorders. So bipolar disorder, depression, major depressive disorder, and then we come down to the psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, and also one of them that we cannot leave out in the Caribbean will be that the substance use disorders. So like persons who use alcohol, abuse alcohol, right? The long time term for it will be alcoholism, but what we use now is alcohol use disorders. They are more prone to committing suicide, either while they are using the substance, which is the alcohol, or while they are withdrawing from it. They can experience depressed mood, which can also cause them to experience suicidal ideations or suicidal thoughts. So when I say suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, I kind of interchanging between them. And then another thing underneath mental health is that you have persons who have a personality disorder, for example, borderline personality disorder. We have a lot of them who come into the hospital frequently with suicide attempts, right? So that is another one that is common. And then, of course, you have those who would be going through life situations. So some persons may be diagnosed with a terminal illness such as cancer, or some persons may also have financial issues. So when they look at suicide, you look at the causes based on what we say biological causes. So some sort of a family history, some sort of mental, you're prone to mental illness, or you look at the social issues, so the financial issues, and then of course the psychological issues as well. So they look at it on a sort of a psychosocial basis, and you would see that it could be multifactorial for some persons, but of course, you have financial stresses, social stresses that could cause persons' relationship. We can't forget that. Some people who may suffer divorce or a frequent breakups in relationship can cause persons to experience suicidal ideation. Right?
All right, you said a lot there, and it's loaded. And I want us to go back and break some of those things down because
Right.
a lot of times on this program we have pastors that come and we talk about a lot of things, and I would never um, take away the fact that there are spiritual perspectives and there are spiritual reasons and so forth. But I wanted tonight specifically to examine this issue from a medical standpoint, because we cannot neglect the fact that there are physical, mental illnesses that that we still have to treat with, and everything is not necessarily a demon, so to speak. And so I want us to look at it. One of the things I want to dissect there is the fact that you said it could be a mental health illness, and I want you to just expand a little bit more on that, because a lot of people don't necessarily see that this is a mental health illness. Could be just like you have diabetes or cancer or anything else. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a real issue that we have to face up with, Yes, there are. We believe as Christians, there spiritual responses to a lot of things, but it is better to even respond once you grasp the understanding of what you're dealing with. And I know sometimes there could be a conflict, but expand a little bit more on the fact that it can be a mental health illness, and there are medical explanations for the fact that somebody might want to very well take their own life.
Okay. So I don't dispute the fact that sometimes, yes, there are spiritual causes for someone also experiencing mental illness. But of course, in my experience, and of course, what we would know is that there are persons who do suffer from mental illness. And because of that, with regards to more so major depressive disorder, you will find that these persons, in their explanation of what they will experience, is a depressed mood, such so that even if everything else is fine in their life, everything is going okay, they just have this mood that they just cannot explain. They say, why am I feeling this way? And they will feel this way almost every day for the entire day. It doesn't matter what you do to cheer them up, they still feel that way, right? And this is what depression causes. Basically, it causes the person to feel in such a way that they just cannot get up to do anything. They don't feel to go to work. They don't have the energy. And of course, it comes with other symptoms, sleep disturbance, lack of pleasure in doing things that they would usually give them pleasure, right? Overly guilty feelings, and because of this low depressed mood that comes along with depression, these persons are prone to suicide. Suicidal thoughts is all part of it. And it's not that they want to do it, it's just that they feel this way because of this underlying mental illness that they have, right? But it's nothing that they can control on their own. So they will tell you, I'm feeling this way, and I just can't explain why, you know?
Right. Well, how let's look at the fact that we're seeing a lot of young children presenting with this issue, or struggling with this issue. A lot of teenagers, early preteens, cutting themselves, trying to drink something, to end their lives and so forth. Explain to us, what are they likely dealing with? What is the issue? What could, I mean, they don't have relationship issues, they don't have financial stresses and all of that. What could be driving them to that extent?
Right. So in that age group, in terms of the teenagers, I think one of the things that they have against them now is this technology age that we live in. So there is so much out there in terms of portraying a certain um, persona, such to say. But what you have going on a lot in that age group is a lot of cyberbullying. So what data coming out recently is that because of this increased cyberbullying, you have an increased suicide rate among that teenage group. Now that may not be really an issue for us in the Caribbean, but it's more in the US. But we do have cyberbullying going on in the Caribbean, believe it or not. And then a lot of children also get bullied at school in Trinidad and Tobago. I know for sure in Trinidad. So because of the bullying, this is what will cause a lot of that persons in that age group or teenage group to commit suicide. But some of them also have relationships, and they're starting to get relationships at a younger age, which is causing some strain. But one of the things that they really saw was the cyberbullying causing an increased risk in suicide or bullying in school itself, right?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
But one thing I just want to expand on, sorry, is that yes, you have suicide as well, but you also have non-suicidal behavior. So what you also find in these teenage groups is that they are doing things like cutting themselves, biting, um, scratching, burning themselves. but it's not that they're doing it to really kill themselves. It's a sort of they're not the suicide is not really their intent, but they're doing it constantly to release some sort of pain. And what we may find in the Caribbean also is that a lot of children we have children actually being abused at home, physically, sexual abuse. Some of them may also have relation issues with family. So like one parent may be going through, the parents, sorry, may be going through some sort of issues at home, divorce. So those children, now, that is the way in which they will try to release the pain, but it's not that they're actually doing it to kill themselves. The suicide is not really the intent, but they actually just cutting, biting, burning, or scratching themselves and just to, relieve the pain that they are feeling. They're not able, the coping mechanism basically, in the way how the teenage kids cope now is different to how we cope back then. They are not able to cope well with stressors. So I think that is also another factor as well. And we also have to look at the fact that we also have incest and abuse, sexual abuse in particular, in homes, which could also cause persons to act out in this way, especially those in the teenage years.
Oh, I'm learning a lot tonight. Let me just remind you, we're chatting with Dr. Sharina and Kwashi, and we're talking about suicidal thoughts and dealing with suicidal thoughts. If you're watching and you want to ask a question, want to ask Dr. Kwashi a question, you can just type it in the comments, and we will bring it up on the screen so that she can deal with it. Dr. Kwashi, I know you give a wide range of reasons and causes of suicidal thoughts and behaviors. Uh, is there a way to determine which one it's heavier, it's more serious, or more likely to lead to somebody attempting to actually take their own lives?
Hmm. That may be, in terms of data, yes, I can explain in terms of, well, of course, I had mentioned before, in the Caribbean, it has to do with the ethnicity, number one, which would be the East Indian population, and that's more so because of the methods as well, and they more frequently attempt, as well as with regards to well, the East Indian population, the Afro Caribbean, they do more like overdosing on analgesics, pain medications, or benzodiazepines, right? Um, I think that's basically it has to do with the ethnicity. I know I listed a lot of factors. One of the things though, bipolar disorder and major depressive disorder as for mental health has been seen as one of the most the one to put you more at risk of committing suicide. In the Caribbean is domestic issues, right? So domestic issues are actually the ones that will put you more at risk of committing suicide. In Trinidad, that was actually what they saw coming out of the data. Yes.
A few weeks ago, well, a few months ago rather, I was reading this book, and there was a concept in the book called "Monkey See, Monkey Do," um, and it was the author was really saying that generally people tend to follow patterns, and one and in the media we were taught not to publish stories of suicide or even attempts, because people generally see it as an opportunity to be glorified even after this life. And what the author was saying is that almost every time a story of suicide is published, you could guarantee not long after, somewhere in that vicinity, somebody else is going to take his or her life. Have you seen anything that suggests this, that validates this statement?
Right. So I think also coming out of Pavo and WHO, um, not in terms of my actual experience, but as the data that they have. So they actually came out with this thing, I think is about 2 years now, and they actually advise media houses to be careful in terms of the details they provide, in terms of oversimplifying the reason for why the person actually committed suicide, because it could be a host or it could be multifactorial, right? That could be the reason why the person committed suicide. Also, they also advise the media not to actually go into details as to how the person did committed the suicide, because of the fact that persons may be watching, based on also what they may be experiencing at the time, may also want to go and, you know, commit suicide by that same method, because they may have seen or heard the method via the television, via news, and they're like, oh, that worked. Okay, let me go and do it. But not in my personal experience. I haven't really encountered that. But it has been stated, and they actually advise the media in regards to, the details that they share when someone commits suicide.
Have you seen any cases of repeat attempts? Somebody you tried once, didn't get through, decide I'll just do it again.
Yes. So, in especially for a personality disorder that we know is called borderline personality disorder, in our experience, both in Trinidad and Tobago, those who have been diagnosed with that disorder actually repeatedly a couple of times, but more so the females, because as we know, females are more likely to have several attempts because they try what we call more non-lethal methods. But with males, males usually complete more because they do more lethal methods. So that is why they are likely to die or complete suicide when women with more attempt. But one of the diagnoses where you will find people committing a lot of suicide is those with borderline, and they come in repeatedly to the hospitals with repeated suicide attempts, like almost basically, even if it's 3, 4 times a year or more, they will constantly frequent the hospital with repeated attempts. And that is because of the inherent borderline personality, the symptoms, and what it entails will put them at risk of suicide.
What should a family member do if you recognize they're watching the program, or they're reading, and they've come across a family member exhibiting some of these I don't want to say symptoms, but some of these traits. um, what do you recommend as the best course of action?
Okay. So for that family member in particular, what they could first do, instead of trying to get them to someone, um, they could try to sit with them, listen, let them be open to hearing what they could is basically actively listening to that individual. So sit with them, try to find out what is going on, what is causing them to have those thoughts. Now, what they will also have to try to find out is if the person actually have a plan as to how they are going to do it. So yes, someone could have thoughts, they can have suicidal thoughts, but do they actually have a concrete plan? So they need to engage them, see if they can chat with them, find out if they have a plan, and do they intend on carrying out the plan. So someone can have the thoughts, they can have the plan, but they may not have an intent. They may not want to go and do it. They do not intend to actually act on those thoughts, but the thoughts are occurring. Now, if it is that the person actually is determined to actually carry out those thoughts, they should seek immediate attention. So, for example, immediate attention would mean going to one of the emergency rooms. So, in Tobago, of course, it would be Scarborough General Hospital, go to the Accident and Emergency Department. In Trinidad, it will be one of the closest hospitals. Now, if it's during the daytime, you can also go to one of the nearest health centers in Tobago or one of the nearest health centers in Trinidad. Now, what can also be done is that they could also carry the relative to one of the psychiatric clinics um, in one of the local psychiatric clinics in their area, which is usually at one of the health centers, to also get help. Now, those clinics are not run every day in some areas, so they will have to try to find out. But obviously, if it's an acute situation where the person has already bought items, of course, and they have the grammar zone there, they have the I don't want to go into too much details, but they have some of the things already. They already plan put certain things money wise, or already making financial arrangements. That person is actually serious and needs urgent attention. They starting to say it doesn't matter, or they started to talk to relatives and let them know you will be fine without me saying certain things like that. So those are the things that they will have to look out for. Those persons who actually already started to take action in terms of what they are doing. Now, the thing about suicide is actually hard to tell if somebody is actually going to act on it sometimes or not. But what they have seen as one of the risk factors or persons who are at high risk are those who have committed the attempt before. So if the person attempted before, of course you would want that person to seek urgent attention because they are the ones who are more at risk of committed suicide. But it's really something that is hard to determine. Not everyone who has suicidal ideations constantly would always need medical attention or would need attention right away. Because if we see them in clinic and it's something that happens occasionally, they have the thoughts, but they don't have a plan and they don't intend on carrying out the plan, then that is not someone that we would institutionalize. What we would do is probably follow them up closely, recommend counseling for them to see a psychologist, etc. Right? So not everyone might also want to come to see a psychiatrist. So what they can do is if they have a counselor who they can follow up with, they can also engage a counselor. And if that counselor see that that person may need to be on medication or may have an underlying mental illness that requires medication, then they will always refer to the psychiatrist. So there are different ways that they can go about it.
Right. And what I wanted to pretty much go forward to is, are there, I know you mentioned that there can be treatment and so forth. What type of, specifically, I mean, you don't have to tell me the name of medication, but what type of intervention medically can be done? I know you mentioned you can go to a psychologist, psychiatrist. Um, because I've seen people who have been stressed, who are having suicidal thoughts, and after some type of intervention, they were able to get past that stage, and they were able to recover and live pretty normal lives. But if that one-on-one type of intervention doesn't work, are there specific treatments that people can get, to help them through that process?
So with regards to treatment, now not everyone will require medications. Now the treatment is based on the illness or what is the underlying cause for the suicidal thoughts, basically. So does this person have a mental illness or they don't have a mental illness? Right? That will of course determine the treatment. So each diagnosis or each cause will be treatment will be geared towards that. So regards to someone who doesn't have a mental illness, of course, they will undergo some sort of counseling, right? No, they may require medications to probably keep them a bit calm or help them to sleep, etc. And those are persons who may be going through some sort of grief, some breakup, some relationship loss, right? They would require counseling, or what we will call, some of them may also require psychotherapy, in other words, right? Then you have the group of persons who will have mental illness. So of course, to treat that, you will have to treat the underlying mental illness. which is what will be causing them to experience the suicidal thoughts. So, for example, for the mood disorders such as depression, bipolar disorder, that will be a class of medication we call antipsychotics will work for the bipolar one. Then you have antidepressants, right, for bipolar two, and also for depressive illness or major depressive disorder, sorry, right? And basically that's it for that type of disorder. Now also the borderline personality disorders. Yes, personality disorders are not what we said treatable in a sense, but you could treat the symptoms. So borderline personality disorder patients will also be placed on antidepressants, right? Especially those who are at high risk of suicide. No, there's another drug that we also use, um, which is really helpful for persons who have suicidal thoughts and depression, and that's lithium, right? Which is a mood stabilizer and it's used in bipolar disorder. So that helps. That has been shown to help a lot. It works really well with regards to persons who experience suicidal thoughts, right? Especially with regards to depression. Right, with alcohol substance use, of course, we know that those group of persons will require some sort of drug rehabilitation, whether it's as an inpatient or as an outpatient, so that they will reduce or basically reach the point where they maintain some sort of sobriety, meaning that they're off of the alcohol for a good period of time. So in terms of that, that is what you would do. For the psychotic disorders, of course, antipsychotics. So basically, you're trying to treat the underlying cause. And of course, for those who may have gone through some sort of abuse, physical, sexual, some sort of domestic issue, of course, to treat it will be to counsel that person, basically. So they will go through some sort of period where they will recover and be back to some sort of normalcy, not really experiencing or not experiencing any more suicidal ideations.
All right. Let me just remind you that we're chatting with Dr. Shirinan Porshi, and we're talking about dealing with suicidal thoughts. If you have any questions, you can drop it there. Don't wait to the end of the program and then you just load all the questions. Just send us your questions, type them in very quickly, and we will try to get them answered. I know that Dr. Porshi has been very thorough. I've learned so much this evening. You know, it's a lesson to just sit and listen this evening. But um, I want us to look at a little bit in terms of um, after or before I get to that, I want us to just really make the point that people can be helped, not because somebody has made an attempt or is having thoughts means that they're written off or maybe they ought to be in chains and forever or anything like that. I just want you to really speak to the audience, let them know that there's definitely help available, and people can recover, people can get past those thoughts.
Okay. So I just want to emphasize or endorse or to reinforce, I should say, that yes, you may be at home wherever you are, even if you experience suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, there is help. You can get help. So never feel that you are at a place where there's no hope for you. Right? There are persons who have been in your shoes and they have sought help and they have gotten over experiencing those suicidal thoughts. So there is help, right? You can either go to your general doctor. You don't even need to go straight to a psychiatrist, right? Which is a doctor who deals with mental illnesses. You can go to a general doctor. You can go to the nearest health center. You can seek out help. Go to your pastor of your church, some sort of elder deacon in the church. Talk to someone about it, basically. talk to your relatives, someone you could reach out to, someone who will understand, because not everyone will understand what you may be going through. So you have to seek help. And even if you talk to someone who may not understand, try to go to someone who will eventually understand you, and just know that there is help, right? If you're having the thoughts really strongly and you feel like you may be attempting or you will want to attempt, seek urgent help, right? Now you could go to the nearest hospitals in your area. Scarborough General Hospital in Tobago in Trinidad, San Fernando General, Eric Williams, Arima hospitals, even St. Anne's Hospital. Yes, there may be a stigma, but you can go there because there is where you will be eventually referred to, or you may be referred to Eric Williams psychiatric department, or even San Fernando. But you can go to Sangre Grande Hospital as well in Trinidad. But go to the nearest health facility, nearest health center, express how you are feeling, and then someone will take it from there. If you have a counselor, someone you can go to, a psychologist, seek urgent help. There is help, you can be treated, and persons will work with you accordingly.
Right, and of course, I still have to make a plug that you talk with your pastor as well, right, as best as possible. Particularly if you understand the nature of the issue. I usually tell people, even if you're going to pray, it serves you a whole lot better if you know what you're praying about. If you have a pretty good understanding of the basis of this illness or this issue, it's a more informed approach to treating with it. So uh, still involve your pastor as best as possible. But
Yes,
the reason why we're doing it this way is that you understand that that there are medical approaches as well, that
yes.
and doctors are also inspired by God as well. So we don't eliminate doctors. Period. So I'm just making a plug, but just emphasizing the fact that there's still a very important role for doctors, and I don't ever value the importance of doctors. Sometimes we still have to balance it, spiritual, medical, and so forth. But my theory is get your understanding, get the information, understand what is happening. Um, yeah, and so when you're praying about it, you know exactly what you're praying about. Um, the, the, there's a particular issue, a very, very sensitive issue. You see it a lot in movies. I can't say I've ever heard a particular case, particularly in the Caribbean, about it, where, and I think you hinted at it, somebody might have a terminal illness, particularly older folks, and they decided that um, I don't want to bear this pain, or I don't want to continue with this suffering, and so maybe this is the best way out, and sometimes you've seen in the movies, sorry to make a reference to the movies, that even doctors are sometimes sympathetic to some of the patients and so forth. Talk to us a little about that. How do people treat with that? How do you say to a person who has been suffering, and they decide that I can't take this pain anymore, to hold on and not give up on life?
Right. So that would be a process in terms of it more comes about counseling. You try to encourage that person, you know, talk to them. Of course, it also is tied back to their spirituality, what they believe. So, in terms of those who have some sort of higher being, of course, we know God as the one we will worship. They will they will basically cope better most times. Yes, all of us, even if we have some sort of spiritual connection, sometimes we do fall along in terms of our faith. But those who have some sort of faith basis will always fall back on that. So they will be able to pray about it, talk to God about it. This is what is happening, this is what's going on with me, basically. And they will be able to cope better because they know, okay, after that, they have this hope of going to heaven. So they make it right with the Lord. Now, having been diagnosed with a terminal illness could be very hard and challenging, and they may not want to be able to go through that painful period or have to endure repeated chemotherapy or repeated treatments or the pain itself. So, in terms of that, those persons will require some sort of counseling as well, to encourage them to sort of bring them along the process, right? Because they can develop um, depressive illnesses or they can develop symptoms of depression because of those underlying terminal illnesses, basically.
All right, let me just remind you, we're chatting with Dr. Shireen and Koshi, and we're talking about suicidal thoughts, and it's you're on to the To Big Inspirational Network, and I really want you to get involved. I've seen some comments coming up there and so forth, but get involved. We just have about 10 minutes to go, and it's so informative, Dr. Koshi. I don't regret this session at all. It's good to hear different perspectives. Sometimes it's good to understand uh, uh, these issues from a different angle, because very often we use our blinders and we just focus on the spiritual aspect. And we also have a responsibility to take care of our bodies, um, and to make sure that we're healthy and we're focused and so forth, so that we can really achieve all the things that God wants us to achieve anyway.
Yeah.
Because we cannot achieve a lot if the body is not good. So the temple itself has to be very sound. So if you want to ask Dr. Kwashi a question, now is the time that you can pop on and just ask her those questions quickly. For those who came on late, Dr. Kwashi, I just want you to just refresh for us some of those indicators of somebody having suicidal thoughts or struggling in this area.
Okay. So, in terms of some of the indicators that will clue you into someone, of course, will be someone who has some underlying mental illness. So, for example, someone who has mood disorders, that's a broad term for it, but someone who may have bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, persons who may be using alcohol, so alcohol use disorders. Now, alcohol may not only be the only substance of use that will cause them to be at risk. You may have cocaine use as well, but more so alcohol use. Then we have those with psychotic illnesses, right? So you have those with schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, and then you have those with personality disorders, and the most common is by borderline, sorry, personality disorder, which will put the person at risk. And then, of course, we have those who may be suffering with some sort of underlying medical illness, especially those with terminal illnesses such as cancer. This will put them at risk of suicide. Now, what to look out for in someone who may be suicidal is they may be withdrawn, always to themselves, no energy, low energy. They don't have any eagerness to get up and do anything. They don't feel to socialize. They don't really feel to go anywhere, and they constantly having these, making comments that I'm going to harm myself. I'm going to kill myself. I don't want to be here. Why am I here? Why am I living? So there may be comments like that constantly being voiced by those persons. So you have to be very watchful for those things and get them to seek urgent help. Also, I had mentioned before that those persons may have started to put financial things in place, put things in place for their children or their relatives, sign things over in their names, and those are also red flags. Also, persons who may have committed suicide before, those persons are also the high risk groups. So the ones who had attempted before, they are always at risk of attempting again. So you always have to, that is actually one of the highest risk factors that they have noted for persons who commit suicide. I think I would have mentioned, yeah, so that's basically it.
All right, I want to put a question to you that you probably did not expect, but let's look at it from the caretaker's perspective, from the doctor's perspective. doctors, the psychiatrists and psychologists and medical staff, the nurses and so forth. Uh, how do you manage that? How do you cope with? I mean, these are people from all across the country coming with all a myriad of issues, and you have to treat with that. How do you maintain your sanity through that, through all of that?
Um, Basically, yes, sometimes you try to not sort of let there be what we would call any sort of transference with regards to the seeing the patients. Um, yes, sometimes your emotions will get the best of you, but over time, you are able to cope with seeing these patients and you try to empathize to the best you can regards to situations. When coming to dealing with persons, especially who has depression, major depressive disorder, that could actually be really taxing on the doctors themselves sometimes. So because it's a lot that they have to deal with, you have to take your time, spend time with them. And then, of course, with the major depressive disorders, they will be having suicidal thoughts. So, regards to treating, you know, depression itself could be taxing on the staff, on the doctors, in terms of treating, helping to counsel the patient, etc. Right? Some people may see psychiatrists as not really doing much hands-on, but mentally, some of the diagnosis in terms of interacting with some of the patients can also drain you as well mentally because it will take effort. You have to sit, you have to listen, you have to counsel. And we love what we do. I love what I do. So it's not that we create an issue with those persons, actually we need to help them, right? But yes, sometimes it can be taxing, but at the end of the day, um, persons require help, and we are there to help them, to bring them through the situation to the best way possible.
Right. And I know a lot of times once people hear about psychiatry and all of that, all they think is crazy people,
Yes.
and a lot of people don't understand that, there are different aspects
Yeah.
um, where that is concerned. You want to just touch very briefly on that for us,
Yes.
for those people who are
Okay.
still confused about what is it, once they hear psychiatrist, what is it about?
Right. So psychiatry is a broader topic. It covers a host of diagnoses. So we have, of course, we would have touched on the psychotic, the mood disorders, but you have actually Alzheimer's or dementia basically comes underneath psychiatry. Anyone who abuses any sort of substances that falls under psychiatry. Persons with sexual dysfunction disorders, erectile dysfunction, ejaculations issues, all of that is actually falls under psychiatry. Anxiety issues, so anxiety disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, um, all of those come under psychiatry, right? So it's a broad area. We deal with a lot of stuff, and it's not, there's a stigma that, okay, I'm crazy, but we don't say crazy. We say we deal with mentally ill patients. That is what, when persons come and tell me, oh, you deal with crazy people. I said, no, I deal with mentally ill persons, right? And under mental illness, yes, you will have the ones who may be loud and talkative or maybe talking to himself or have psychotic symptoms, yes. But you also have those who are depressed. And because of the depression and because of the stigma with regards to psychiatry, they may not want to seek help. But they also have the ones who just use substances alone. So like alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, and may require help. And one of the things that we actually see coming out lately and has been accounting for a lot of the admissions and stuff is that we see persons using substances such as marijuana actually can cause persons to experience psychotic symptoms. Psychotic symptoms mean hearing voices, seeing things that are not there, or they can be paranoid or having persecutory delusions, thinking people are out to harm them, people are out to get them, people are talking about them. So, yes, the use of substances can also cause somebody to experience psychosis, basically, to say, right? So, yes, it's a broad area, and of course, we do cover dementia. So, we cover persons who suffering from Alzheimer's disease, and of course, the new term for it, they change it from dementia to neurocognitive disorder, right? But that also falls under psychiatry as well.
All right, and sometime we will talk again about marijuana. That's a big
Yeah,
topic.
yeah,
There are a lot of people advocating for marijuana use, and there are a lot of people who argue of medical and other benefits. But there are also implications of marijuana use. And some other time, maybe when we're talking about that, I'll have you back to give that medical perspective
thank you.
on marijuana use. I've seen it myself, and I tell people I've never been attracted to marijuana because I've seen people who've used it, and I've seen how they've turned out. And I
Yeah.
can't think of anybody who has turned out very well. But there are others who argue for it. But we'll talk about that some other time. Coming up on this very program, we're going to invite you back, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I'm really happy that you're on tonight, Dr. Korshi. It was very informative. I know there are a lot of people out there struggling with suicidal thoughts. And when I looked at those statistics, it really startled me. Um, I think in Guyana it's like 400 per 100,000. It's a big number, and Suriname
Yeah.
and Trinidad is right behind that. That's a lot of people, and those numbers are the people who actually completed the
So,
act. That has nothing to do with those who attempted, or those who are thinking about it, those who are struggling. And there has to be some type of intervention, and that's why we do programs like these, so that friends and families can recognize these tendencies and understand that there's help available. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to get depressed yourself because a family member is having thoughts. There's help available, medical and spiritual, and all the help available. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add before we go. Anything you want to drop in before we go that we might have missed?
I think basically I believe all the bases, well, the main basis has been covered. But basically, just to reiterate that you can get help. There is help if you're out there and you are experiencing suicidal ideations. Just know that you can seek urgent help either at one of your nearest hospitals, your nearest health center, a psychologist, a pastor, a friend, your parents, your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. Talk to someone, express how you're feeling, talk to someone who will understand. Because there are lots of persons out here who just do not understand mental illness or who don't understand persons who has mental illness. They just think that the person is, especially with depression, they might think the person is just lazy. You don't want to get up off your bed, not realizing that that person may be experiencing some depressed mood that they just don't have any control over. So I'm just reinforcing that, and just know that there is help. You can get help and you can overcome your suicidal thoughts.
Right, and well, I know you were in Tobago, and
Yeah.
just for information purposes, if somebody's in Tobago and they've seen this program and they say, you know what, I need some help, they can go to any health center if it's during the day, and of course, the Scarborough General Hospital, they can go as well.
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
Right. So yes, they can Scarborough General Hospital. We have clinics. Well, actually, I'm based in Trinidad
Oh, you
currently.
are. Oh,
So I've been in Trinidad since 2019 and working in St. Anne's Hospital. So I'm actually specializing now in psychiatry. in my final year of psychiatry right now. But I can still give some information. I believe I have a fair idea, but
Sure.
you can go to Scarborough General Hospital. The accident and emergency is more for emergency basis, but there is a clinic on Wednesdays at the hospital from about 9, I believe, that you can go to. But there are also clinics throughout the island, right? But the main one will be at Scarborough Health Center, where that clinic is usually run on a Tuesdays and a Fridays on Fridays, but the other clinics they are only run once per month at Canaan Health Center, Mason Health Center, Roxborough Health Center, and Bethel Health Center. Right, so those are only once a month clinics. But with regards to getting any sort of urgent help, you can go to the Scarborough General Hospital on a Wednesday at 9 o'clock, or even I should say 8 o'clock, and then 8 o'clock as well at Scarborough Health Center on a Tuesday and also on a Thursday.
All right.
As
And I think that somebody just put a comment there, but we I wrong up by just mentioning it. You
Tuesday
know,
and a Friday. Sorry, my bad.
yes.
Sorry.
Right, and they were somebody just made a comment there talking about the fact that the stigma of it is one of the main reasons why a lot of people don't necessarily seek help because they're afraid of what people will say. What if
Mhm.
somebody I mean, even within a Tobago context,
Mhm.
if I go to Scarborough Hospital in Tobago, it's a major likelihood that somebody there will know me, and they will recognize that oh, this one son or brother,
Mhm.
he's crazy, and so they stay away. So it's important to be able to see past that and understand that getting help is very important, and for family members, ensuring that your relatives get help is also very important. But we out of time, Dr. Koshi. I
Okay.
want to thank you so much.
Thanks. It was a
Very
pleasure. And
informative.
thanks for having me, Mr. McClure.
Thank you very much. It was very informative. And next week, we're going to be back here again. Next week, we're going to be talking about spiritual issues again. Next week, we'll be talking more about the church, modern day church. Why are people leaving? Why are people frustrated? What can be done, to stem that? What can be done to get people more get people interested in church again? So we're going to be talking about that. We'll have some pastors on. I expect that is going to be a very interesting discussion. And I also want to let you know that Command Your Morning is going to be live again on TIN beginning Monday morning at 5:30. We're going to have pastors from different places, Pastor Dapo, Pastor Dill. From Suriname, we have Prophet Cairo. We have a lot of people from different places who will be taking prayer every morning at 5:30. So you can join us at 5:30 on TIN for prayer. So thanks again, Dr. Kwashi. It was a pleasure. And thanks to all those of you who stayed with us throughout the program. We'll see you again. And remember, surely goodness and mercy shall follow us all the days of our lives, and we shall dwell in the presence of the Lord forever and ever. Amen and amen.
Amen.
Right. Thanks so much.
Amen. You're welcome, Father.